think if we start, the audience in the gallery might realise that we're getting underway. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Te iwi o rangatane, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. I'll kick us off with our opening karakia. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora. Homi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for joining. I recognise we're in the home straight, not only for today, but for the first half of this year, so we will crack on. Normal Culture and Sport Committee rules applying. We are being recorded and live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The health and safety requirements for the Council chamber will be shown on the screens eventually. Yeah. Thank you for joining.
You're welcome.
So fire and emergency and health and safety on the screen in front of you. So if you're not familiar with the building, please take a moment to familiarise yourselves with that. Do we have any online participants? We don't have any online participants today. To our first, I don't have any notification of additional items. Nope, good. We'll do apologies from the Mayor for early departure, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Debbie Marshall-Lobb. Councillor Denson's arrived, so he's disappeared off there. I will move, though, that we receive those apologies, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Thank you, and ask you to vote on that, please. That was me and Billy. Carried unanimously, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest for today's meeting? Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got an interest in item 11 and 14.
Thank you. Noted. Public comment. Are we receiving any public comment today? I've not been made aware, but nope. Good. Thank you. That means we can move on to our next item on the agenda, which is presentation about gravel and tar. We have Steve Stannard with us today as the race director. Thank you, Steve, for joining. And we will hand over to you. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be some questions after, depending on where you get us to. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I was primarily going to talk about, in fact, the National Criterium Championships, which the Council supported, but I will talk a little bit about gravel and tar also, which the Council has continually supported and certainly appreciated. I'll talk about the Criterium Championships first. That was an event with national championship status held at Massey University in Palmerston North on January 22nd, which was the Monday of the Wellington Anniversary weekend. It had an official national championship status and attracted competitors from all around New Zealand. There were a couple of, in fact, internationals that also competed. There were 6 different events on the day, and it was the second year we've held that event at Massey University. It was like the first year. It was a great success, and pretty much all the stakeholders were very pleased. The weather was even really good for a second year running, and that certainly helped. The gravel and tar was held on the Saturday just prior, and again that went extremely well. We held the women's race for the first time in a couple of years again. A little disappointing on the number of starters in the women's race, but we had to get going again sort of post-COVID with that, and perhaps that wasn't surprising. I should point out that the women's gravel and tar event is the only women's cycling race in New Zealand, road cycling race, apart from the national championships. It's the second race in the world that pays the same prize money as men. It's one way that we see that we can promote women's sport apart from men's sport. So we're quite proud about that. I guess we were a little disappointed in the support from the national body in that context, but that's an ongoing discussion. But overall, the Gravel and Tar events went very well on the Saturday. So we had the Gravel and Tar events on the Saturday. On the Sunday of that weekend, we, with Palmy Bid, we ran a retro cycling event in town, which went quite well also. It gave the opportunity for the visiting cyclists and some of their supporters to get involved and ride their bikes around and just, I guess, feel like they were having it was value adding to their visit, I guess. That's an event that we've done in the past, and this year was probably a little bit more successful because the level of participation was a bit higher. Going to the Criterium on the Monday, we live streamed the event once again, and this did take considerable effort and organisation. For the live stream, we had a total of, at the Criterium, we had a total of 2,189 views with an average viewing duration of 17 minutes. About 55% of the viewers from New Zealand, the rest mainly from the USA, and interestingly Brazil, I don't know why, and Australia and a variety of other countries. About a third of the viewers were returning from last year. And I don't expect that you will have seen it, but the footage from the National Criterium Champs around Massey was just brilliant. It really portrays the city and the university in a very positive light. That event, like Gravel and Tar, went very smoothly. We had one accident which was appropriately dealt with an on-site response. I just want to thank the City Council for supporting both events. I don't want to speak on behalf of the Goretti Chain Trust because I'm not on the board there anymore, but the continual support of the City Council, the District Council and others actually for the Gravel and Tar is very valuable. And the event has the Gravel and Tar set us up really well in the last couple of years to produce the National Criterium Championships as well. So it not only provides an opportunity for cyclists, it provides an opportunity for those that might want to watch. It provides an opportunity to obviously publicise the city and the region in a positive light, but also provides an opportunity for those involved in the sport, the commissaires, even volunteers to get some experience. Just going to the Criterium Champs, I'd like to acknowledge the facilities staff at Massey who were very positive and helpful, and of course the university management for allowing the event to take place there. I'll just talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I'd like to acknowledge local oral surgeon Glenn Berg for his support and Tony McLaughlin for organising the live stream. Cycling New Zealand, which is a national body, we're really pleased with both events. Again, we're one of the only regions in the city that's able to organise these things, partly because we're relatively cycling friendly. We have the roads to be able to do these things. They're not as busy as other places. And we have the expertise, and that includes the volunteers and other people that have been involved over the years. For Gravel and Tar, we're looking at moving the event to later in the year. One of the reasons is because the reason we had it originally in January was because it was a low time in terms of bed nights, so it was appropriate. We try to get people in the region there. It fitted in with a calendar, and to get international riders, we would piggyback off the New Zealand Cycle Classic that George Sandoval organised. Now, my information is that George Sandoval's race is potentially not going to go ahead because of a lack of support, so that sort of undermines some of our rationale for having it in January. So we're looking at having discussions about moving Gravel and Tar to later in the year when it would be easier for us to get volunteers and without the lead into Christmas. The New Zealand's Criterium Champs, I was always thinking, and the discussion was that we would only do it for a couple of years at the most, because generally these things go North Island, South Island, North Island, and that's only fair. there was an expectation that we weren't going to organise it for next year until Monday, in fact, when I got told that the people that were going to organise it, which was Christchurch City Council, I think, decided they weren't going to do it, and I was approached to ask if we would be able to run the Criterium Championships again in January. Now that came as a bit of a surprise, but pleasing because quite clearly the national body has confidence in our city and our region to be able to run such events. My feeling is that when you get asked to do something, you've got to think hard about saying no, and I'd be interested to know what the council thinks about that, because they've been supporters the last couple of years, and I would require that support to run it again, and obviously that of Massey. There is perhaps an opportunity, rather than running it right in the town, that's up for discussion, but obviously traffic management would be an issue. Just so I'm interested in what the council might think about that. Lastly, I know, in fact, there's a really good opportunity for us, because of the reputation we have at running such events, to run the Elite National Road Championships, which is a much bigger event. And I've had some very preliminary discussions with a few people around, including Cycling New Zealand, and they're keen to at least talk. And again, that shows the confidence they have in our ability to run and host such events. So just, again, thank you very much to the City Council for supporting those cycling events. They do bring external money into the region and the town. Some of that are foreign dollars, which is always good. And it certainly, I believe, paints us in a very good light. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Are you happy to take some questions? Excellent. I just wanted to start this, because I'm coming in the queue as well. You made a comment about the women's race.
Yes.
And a sort of a question about the support of the national body for that. Can you just tell me what the concern is there?
So being the only women's, in fact, road race in New Zealand, and the only women's UCI event in New Zealand, we were disappointed that the national body didn't put a national team in. Right. And we made that quite clear to them. I think if we were to run the event again, they would think very hard about not providing a team.
So is it your intention to run it again? Is it your intention to run the women's race again?
Well, yeah, we would like to run it again. Again, I can't talk on behalf of it's not my role to talk on behalf of the Garisi Chain Trust, but one of the aims is to have more women riding bicycles, and this provides an exemplar of that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Harpenter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Steve. The cost of running the Criterium, what did we put in? Do you know off the top of your head?
Last year was, this year, January this year was $25,000. The budget's around 40, so I had to find a bit more, but that's okay.
Yeah. So you'd want 25,000 from us that's unbudgeted for this year?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd need at least about 25 to run it again. That would be at Massey. The beauty of running it at Massey is the traffic management costs are minimal, because it's actually a private road.
So if it was in the city, you think it'd be more?
Well, it would be really nice to run it in the city, in fact, but traffic management costs would clearly be higher unless we can twist someone's arm to do it. It's nice to run things right in the middle of town, but the first thing I think about in running an event is safety. The second thing is safety, and the third thing is safety. And closing roads is the safest thing.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We're just having a conversation here about that funding question, and I wonder if I might invite Luke McIndoe to. Can you provide any enlightenment for us, Luke, on how that unbudgeted additional opportunity of an extra criterion might sit within our funding envelope?
Absolutely, through the chair. So this event was funded through the contestable funding process via the Major Event Fund, and it is absolutely available again if it was to run again next year. So that would be the process we'd follow. Yeah.
So just an application process and where we get to.
And we've already started that process. I've been in communication with Steve.
Thank you, Luke.
Yesterday, the first thing I did when I found out was send an email to him.
I think that's everybody's first response, is to pick up the phone to Luke and see if they can find some money. Thank you for that, Luke. The Mayor has a question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Steve, and thanks for everything you're doing around cycling. So just the dates of these events. So the criterium now would be when?
Well, that's up for grabs, in fact. But I think probably at the start of the year. We could still hold that on that same weekend, but we wouldn't hold it on the Monday. One of the criticisms was, particularly from Auckland, that it's not a public holiday up there, and so it was difficult for those people to come down. The people you want to come down are the mums and dads of the under 17s and under 19s. Yeah. They're the ones with the money, and they couldn't. It was difficult for them to come because it wasn't a public holiday. So that's up for negotiation.
And that other event, the Elite Road Championships, when is that likely to be?
Generally, that's around about the second week of February. And I've had a few discussions with a few people around here about just, if we were to do something like that, when would we do it? And around about that time. That's usually when it's held.
And Gravel and Tar's new dates? Sorry,
So we're thinking about Gravel and Tar in October, possibly the weekend before the long weekend, and there's been some discussion around when's appropriate there in terms of accommodation and what else is on in town. Also, we need to try and talk to the Australians to fit in with their calendar as well, but that's sort of tentative, and that would be obviously not this year but next year.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on that, Steve, so with these events moving to different dates, is that something you're talking to the events team about as to how that fits in our events calendar?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I say, my first correspondence was just with Luke the other day, but the Crick Champs just sort of come out of the blue all of a sudden, but the Gravel and Tar, I've been talking to people, to various people about when we might hold that. Yeah. But the Elite National Championships, which is a much bigger fish to fry, that's very early on. What we would really need is I think, as Lucas talked to me about, a real group think about that and just how it would be approached, because it's quite a big event. Yeah,
and even mentioning October for Gravel and Tar, and we already have two major events sitting in October. There's some pressure on calendars, so it's good to hear that you're having those conversations. There are no further questions. Thank you, Steve, for coming in and giving us that update. I know the Greasy Chain Trust Board AGM is coming up soon, so please pass on our good wishes to those in case none of us are there. We'll see where we get to. I will move that the Culture and Sport Committee receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Open that for any comments. Do really appreciate the vibrancy that the race events bring to the city. Great to see that partnership with Massey University, particularly in the criterion, and that's encouraging to hear that it looked really good on the TV. I think every time we have one of our major events, I cross my fingers for good weather, because the viewers get a better experience when the sun is shining in Palmerston North, which is not always guaranteed. But thanks for coming in and sharing about that. Really interested to see what happens with the women's race. I think you've shown great leadership in the sport to A, programme a women's race, and then B, lift the prize money for that. And it would be a shame if we didn't manage to stick that going into the future. So I do look forward to hearing what happens, and I'm sure we're available to provide any support to the national body that you need if you need something in behind that. But thank you, Steve, for coming in today, and please take our best wishes back to the wider team. I'll ask you all to vote to receive that presentation. Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Our next presentation is from the New Zealand Rural Games team, who I will invite to come forward. We have Daniel O'Regan, Marketing Manager, Margaret Cavellis, Outgoing Trust Board Chair, and no stranger to this room, and James Stewart, Trust Board Member. And again, none of you are strangers to us. It's lovely to have you back with us today to tell us all about the Rural Games and how it went this year, what your plans are for the future. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and your worship and councillors. It's good to be back here again. in such a supportive environment. We are extremely grateful to this council for the support that we've had over the years, and especially this last year with the commitment that you have made to the rural games. The board feels very strongly that despite what's been happening in the economic downturn within the country, that again we held a successful 3-day event, and it's only getting better. We seriously do not want to ever continue having the games if they are not as successful as they are, and I want you to know that the board feels very strongly about that. We have managed to deflect any interest in having the games in other cities, as we've had to fight off for quite a long time, particularly Christchurch, but also Auckland. They belong here. This is the place. There's no other place with a square like it. And I think the thrill constantly is that we can put them on free to the public, and that the huge number of families, the thing that thrills us the most is the number of preschoolers that we see with their families, and the number of older people. It is an all-age event, and it belongs here. And the other comment I'd just like to make before I hand over to Daniel to give the report really is the extremely exciting development of the Agri Futures, the Friday program, which has been picked up not just by those schools that are doing agribusiness, but now the government has seen fit to support this through MPI as a strategy which can be taken nationwide, and it is incorporated now into the syllabus within secondary schools. But I mention it particularly because Massey University is on board with this in terms of the modules that were generated. We've created an advisory board of which the head of agribusiness at Fielding High School is the chair. The development there is very exciting, and as many of you know my background in education, this is tremendously satisfying because it is one of the 3 major criteria of the New Zealand Rural Trust board, that we provide an opportunity for education within the agri sector. So with that, I hand over to, and also just to mention, thank you for referring, this is my last time that I will be here. I'm in the transition period at the moment with Brendan Burke. It's very exciting. As you all know, I am delighted always to put in somebody that's at least 20, 30 years younger than myself into these roles. And Brendan has a tremendous record as an event organiser. But as those of you who know Steve Hollander will know that I've been instructed to stay on the board for at least 1 more year. But thank you very much for your support.
Kia ora, everybody. Just going to take you through a little bit of what we do. On the weekend of New Zealand Rural Games, we have a go. This is targeted at all ages, and there are activities that we encourage people to participate in, from gumboot throwing right through to haystacking, coal shoveling, and kids' activities in terms of tree climbing, digger driving, and horse cart ridings. These are quite popular. The lines are quite long, in particular for the tree climbing and the miniature pony horse rides. And we're continuing with them, and next year we're hoping to introduce axe throwing Have a Go. The Ford Ranger New Zealand Rural Sports Awards, these are held on the Friday night. We had about 430 high value guests there. Some of the VIPs were pretty outstanding, with Lewis Clarebert, Joseph Sullivan, Gilbert Anoka, Holly Robinson, a few others there as well this year. Every year we manage to bring in quite a few people from all over the country that represent sport in New Zealand on the big scale, and have them as speakers. And they also pull in quite a large number of politicians from the region, and it's a privilege to have them in the room there. Features, as Mark just said, this year we had about 240 students in the square. They came from Taranaki through to Taupō, Flaxmere and Wairarapa. We do, and we are hopeful of growing it. The previous year we had Cyclone Gabriel affecting the numbers. This year we had a clash with athletics. We've ensured that there will be no clashes going forward. And again, we also had quite a few number of VIPs present at the event as well. AgriFutures also operates in Auckland, Christchurch, and for the first time this year, Southland. New Zealand Rural Sports, yeah, so this is basically about 200 odd athletes. This year we had the Golden Loader competition, which ran over 2 days, and then we still have our timber sports, which is our main one. You would have seen the grandstands there. They were a lot bigger this year. They may actually grow again next year. And we sort of have to do that because the crowd numbers around there, particularly on the Saturday, was quite high, between 11 and 2, and we have to think about how we manage that. I hope you all congratulated Adam Miller. He's a local prison officer who is now New Zealand champion. And we used up for about 100 volunteers. A good number of them are from Fielding High School, Palmerston North and Palmerston North Girls and Palmerston North Boys High School, as well as members of the public and young farmers. We're particularly grateful to them for that. Our reach, so we're estimating around 40,000. We don't have exact numbers. We have tried and tried again. We have a bit of a plan coming up with Lions to try and get some higher qualified, more considerate volunteers on certain roles that will help us actually get a real number. We've tried drones, we've tried photography. It's just a bit difficult with a square with a lot of trees. Our Facebook reach is picking up. We did get a hack and we did lose our Facebook page one year, so we are getting back to that. YouTube, most of the views are in the US, Australia, UK and here in New Zealand. And print media, we're still getting a lot of print. We are losing a lot of publications, as you all know, in particular in the ag sector. It's pretty tough, but we are still managing to get coverage, and radio's going gangbusters. Just about 40 minutes of that was on Radio New Zealand at different times. TV, Sky TV keeps running the timber sports and our 1 hour television program on TV3, and if you go on to Discovery, you can watch it now as well. We also held an event in Fielding just before the games as a precursor, and that's aimed at really young families. It's for the toddlers, and that worked really well this year, particularly as part of the Fielding anniversary. Just before the games, we have a golfing event. We had about 100 odd players take part in that, and I think from memory $15,000 was raised for the Manawatu Rangitikei Rural Support Trust. We ran a competition with Palmy Bird, and it was spend $20 in the retail sector and go on the draw to win a winter weekend in Queenstown. About 730 odd entries there. It went really well. We engaged directly with every retailer in the central city or an employee of them in the months leading up to it. It was a heck of a big job. We are in talks with Palmy Bird again about how we can do this again, but differently, perhaps through our app that we've created. The app is in its second year and it's sort of being perfected now. It's being done by a startup company for free. We're very grateful for them to test run their model on us. A lot of charities that were supported include Companion Pets, Rehoming Standard Breeds, Rehoming Working Dogs, Lions with their Glob, Great Mates, Palmy Hospital's Renal Unit and Rural Fire Service, as well as Manawatu Rangitikei Rural Support. We ran a survey, 2 surveys, one for athletes, one for the public. There weren't huge numbers. Again, we want to have the Lions team on the surveys so that we have a bit more consistent, but the results are good and pretty much everyone is wanting us to come back and add or do something more. The biggest gripes are around cleaning toilets, as is always the case in a big event, right through to more seating and that sort of stuff. And one of the things I skipped over before was a relaxation zone that we put in this year for the first time, and that's just a place to chill out, especially for those that have trouble, with movement, but also young mums and those with disabilities. And it actually was quite full. It's got its own big screen. UCOL gave us the marquee to go up there. It was quite a nice little thing, and I think we're going to grow it. And I just started talking about some of the things that we're going to be doing. We're also going to be looking at doing an economic impact data statement around the games. We do want guidance from you guys as to how in depth you want that, because these can cost from 50,000 through to 20,000 through to 5,000. We hopefully want to partner with an organisation like Lions to be able to deliver this in a more economic way that brings benefits back to our local community charity. But that's up for discussion with you guys. On Friday, we definitely want to lift our numbers, and Sunday our numbers can grow as well, but Saturday we're pretty much full. So that's...
10th year, next year.
I've forgotten the most important thing. It's the 10th edition of the New Zealand Rural Games in 2025, and we're super excited about that. Very shortly, there will be a wine range released. I can't announce through who, but that will hopefully be coming in September, and you'll be able to buy that at your nearest provider. We have a couple of other things in hand as well that we're sort of planning for, but we won't really finalise those plans till about August. Number one thing on there really is remain a free event and stay financially viable. The report that we gave to Luke covers off the fact that we actually did manage to stay viable this year. It has been incredibly hard. You all should know the effect on the economy, particularly in the rural economy in recent years, and we're incredibly proud of the team and the efforts that went to. We were actually adding sponsors to this event up until a week before, just to make sure that we were able to do that. And I think we're just about at the end of it.
I'd just like to add in terms of that sponsorship, we are very lucky in having super talented, energetic, bossy, you name him, Steve Holland. And I keep talking to him about his succession. I know his brother's here. We won't always have Steve in this capacity, and it is to find sponsorship acquisition. I don't know any. I went to try and learn how to do it myself, but there's no other way than building trusting relationships, and it has to be continual. And what Steve often says to me, some of our big companies that do support us wonderfully, they can only do so on yearly contracts because often a lot of them have their head offices are in other countries, so they can't guarantee longer a 3-year contract. So it's very difficult. That's just what I'm saying, and we're lucky that we can get the 1.3 million to run it.
Thank you all for the presentation. We do have some questions. I wanted to start, Daniel, I think you mentioned the AgriFutures, those clashes that we've experienced, and you've ensured there won't be any clashes. Does that mean you've persuaded other people to move, or we've moved? How have we got that?
No, the Manawatu Athletics event changed their days about a month before our event and didn't really tell anyone until, it was a little bit too late. But we've had a discussion and it's all clear and won't happen again.
Yeah, those calendar questions continue to plague us a little bit. And we did have some feedback, and you've probably heard the same thing, some grumbles about the parking situation around the square. I wondered if you had any comment on how we might address those issues.
There's two things going on there. One is because of the setup and that sort of thing, a lot of the area is coned off. And we are talking with our event manager, some events around the number of car parks that actually need to be zoned off on the Friday. Potentially we can reduce it, and I think there's a good chance of that happening, which hopefully prevent the problems that occur. And the other side of it is around accessibility and disability parking. It almost needs a full-time person on it to make sure that they remain available. So we've got to think about how we fund that and how we do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harpiter. Oops.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for all the hard work you guys do. Just one quick question around the economic impact of the event. Have you thought about working with our economist at the City Council to do that report?
Love to.
Love to, yeah.
Absolutely love to.
Okay, just talk to David.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Daniel. Just you mentioned before that there's some capacity for more patronage on the Friday and the Sunday. So what kind of thinking is there to try and actually improve that situation for you?
On the Friday, we're bringing the North Island Secondary School Sharing Championship from the Saturday to the Friday, just because we think that can actually probably add an extra 10 teams to that lineup, which will then create another draw card, if you like, for family members. I think our previous speaker spoke about secondary school student sports events and the effect of their parents' pockets. That's the sort of thing that's in our mind. In terms of the Sunday, the idea around the app and competition to spend money in the central city, and we potentially may do the draw at the rural games on the Sunday. We think the numbers on Sunday can almost probably double. Is probably the feeling that we've got. But yeah, as I said on Saturday, it's pretty chocker.
Councillor Hancock, just to add, we did have some plans to invite a lot of primary school children from some low decile schools and put buses on, and we had all that set up the year that COVID happened. But we have spoken with Minister Hoggart recently and got support around the whole education idea of growing food and helping schools that have community gardens and bringing that right through, because a number of the principals of the schools who we speak to at their meetings tell us that a lot of the children don't know about what happens within our region in terms of farming. So that's the Modrand Intermediate is another school that we've been working with towards this. Now, we were going to receive funding from Manawatu Sport Manawatu for this. And again, that is something we will still pursue, although we find it's difficult that Sport Manawatu isn't able to support us quite in the way that we'd like them to in this capacity. But that's something that the Minister's very interested that we pursue. Now, that could be a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning and bring them for lunch and then take them home in the afternoon. We'd love to do that.
Great, thank you, Margaret. Yeah, sounds like it's all in good hands. It's a great event. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Loved the games, attended on the Saturday and Sunday. And I, being an ex-retailer, had a few retailers on the phone grumbling about car parking and lots of competitors parking in the parks. Both days I attended, I parked in the back of the convention centre, which I guess is a bit of a hop, skip and a jump to the square. Do you think that could be a bit of a compromise, that we could get maybe some more competitive vehicles in that back car park, and it's pretty close to the event?
Absolutely. Yeah, we did try to encourage a lot of people to park in Railway Reserve.
Yeah.
That didn't really work too well.
Yep.
We also try to encourage camper vanners to come and park there as well. We need to have a think about particularly camper vanners.
Yes.
Because, the city's pretty much at capacity in terms of hotel, motel rooms for that weekend. So we need to think about how we can up our impact, and the only way I can really see us doing that is by getting camper vanners in who don't need to book accommodation. But yeah, I totally take your point.
I know it's a double-edged sword. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more questions. So thank you all three for coming in. James, did you want to say anything? It's very unlike you to sit quietly anyway.
No, I know. Look, the Trust was really rapt how it all panned out this year. We're very happy with the cultural sort of the diversity that attended and the young people. I think it was really positive weekend. So I think the other thing is this is a great platform for a lot of other things happening, and it goes a lot wider than just the 3 days, and you've heard the education and just all sorts of different things coming off that. So thank you very much for the support. We really appreciate you coming along and the support.
Well, thank you for coming along to see us today and bringing your presentation. Our very best wishes as you go forward with this one. We look forward to see what comes next. So I will move the recommendation that the Culture and Sport Committee receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Meehan. We'll open that for any comments, but you're free to take a seat back in the gallery. Thank you. That's exciting that we're heading for 10 years of rural games. Obviously not all of it has been with us, so maybe we'll get to do 10 years of rural games and then 10 years of rural games in Palmerston North. But it's become, I think the term iconic is probably overused in this chamber, but rural games is an iconic event for our city now. It's found its niche in that busy events calendar. People look forward to it. I often have my parents visiting from the UK at that time of year, and my dad thinks that this is exactly the sort of event that New Zealand should be having. As a retired farmer, he just thinks that's proper entertainment. So thank you for keeping him amused for a few days while he's with me for the summer. You are really taking one for the team there. Thank you, Marg, to you particularly for your service on the board as outgoing chair. Thank you for that very dynamic connection you've provided to this chamber and this council to help us to understand the value proposition of the rural games. You've been a strong advocate, and I'm pleased to hear that you won't be disappearing away straight away from that role. We look forward to you nursing Brendan into his role. Thank you for the work that you've done for us. Colleagues, I will ask you to vote to receive the presentation. It's carried with 10 votes in favour and 1 abstention. Thank you, Rural Games, for coming to visit with us today. The next item on our agenda is the minutes. The recommendation that the minutes of the Culture and Sport Committee meeting of 27 March 2024, Part 1 Public, be confirmed as a true and correct record, which I will move, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Being none, I'll ask you to vote, please. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Council endorsement of Hauraki Tour, Horizons Region Spaces and Places Plan for Sport and Recreation 2023 to 2043, presented by Anne-Marie Maury, Policy Analyst, and Kelly Shanks, Chief Executive, Sport Manawatu. Lovely to have you with us. Hand over to you, Anne-Marie, I assume, to start, and we'll see where we go. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, councillors. Just like to firstly introduce the people sitting to the right of me today. I think most of you know Kelly Shanks, Chief Executive, Sport Manawatu, but next to her is Carl Johnston. Carl is the new General Manager, Partnerships, and has recently replaced Brad Cassidy in that role. Given that you had a briefing on Hauraki Tour very recently, I think about 3 weeks ago, we will take the report or the memo as read, but Kelly and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. That was very rapid. And thank you for joining us, Greg. Very welcome in the chamber today. Carl, sorry. I did have a question. I found the report really interesting, and I think the workshop did surface a lot of questions, so thank you for taking us through that process. But my reflection on the data that came through, and great to see the comparison of the different regions, was just how much of the activity that people are reporting is not sport. It's active recreation in different ways. I suppose my question for you, Anne-Marie, is that how can we use that information to make sure we're getting our spending in the right place to enable people to be active in the ways that they want to be active?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have done a little bit of thinking about this, and yeah, it's an interesting question, certainly. Just very, very quickly, we've done a high-level analysis just of council spending across activities, the key ones being the play and recreation activity and the active transport activity, which includes shared path provision and footpaths. So based on that, and I say this is just a very quick analysis, we think that we're probably spending more in the active recreation area than we do in sport. It's probably slightly higher on the active recreation side, and I suppose the other side to that is how that does match up with the participation levels that were identified in the Hauraki Tour, the section of that particularly relates to the city. So again, just very, very quick analysis of that. As you sort of point out, that probably about half of those top 23 activities occur in council facilities in the broader sense, so parks, footpaths, walking tracks, playgrounds, And interestingly, about 30% of those top 23 activities take place in the home environment. And yeah, the rest of the participation activities are sport related. So, you know, there still is quite a lot of, I suppose, spend in both areas of active recreation and in sport. But I think at the moment we've probably got that balance about right once we take into consideration the active transport components.
Okay, thank you. And I suppose a question more generally about He Raki-Tua, how we're expecting it to function. This, I think the wording we've got there is about guiding, inform and guiding council decisions. How do you see that operating most effectively?
In many ways, I think it has use in kind of many different aspects of council, and the implications for council identified in section 4 of the report. But yeah, I mean, the vision of the He Raki-Tua is, I suppose, similar to council's own in terms of it's very focused on having spaces and places that invite people, enable people to be physically active. It's certainly, it's very similar to the 2018 plan that we've been working under for the last few years in terms of an approach. Having said that, the first, I suppose, iteration of the plan was very facility sort of supply focused, like what have we got? I think He Raki-Tua signals kind of a more aspirational direction for the region in terms of particularly around collaboration with our neighbours and other partners. So that would be, you know, our iwi partners, our funding partners, obviously the Regional Sports Trust, who have you know, led this process out in alongside Sport New Zealand. So yeah, I think it is trying to, you know, get our collective minds together and can identify all of the things that are happening so we don't end up with duplication, and we're making, you know, or giving, it's helping us give you advice as to what things we should, or council should be considering investing or supporting.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. That point about avoiding duplication, yeah, the report talks a lot about supporting development of things or doing, yeah, who does which bits of things. Would He Raki-Tua ever be the way that you suggested that we didn't do something? Oh, is that in there and I've just not read it that way?
No, definitely. I think, you know, particularly when we are seeing community sports groups, organisations and clubs wanting things to happen, there may not be a need, and I suppose that's one of the things, or the valuable things about the process within the plan is to, I suppose, guide those organisations through understanding what we have, in, you know, not only in the city but kind of, you know, in our neighbouring regions, and yeah, often there is a non-facility solution. So yeah, working out, trying to, you know, I suppose get the best out of the facilities we have before we go down that path of saying we need a new facility for X, Y, and Z. So, you know, very much so trying to, you know, stop those decisions sort of, you know, gaining a life of their own without that kind of supporting evidence.
Lovely. Thanks, Anne-Marie. A question from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just interested in the second recommendation. Could we understand who the parties would be to that MOU?
So the parties would be, I understand it, excuse me, Sport New Zealand, Sport Manawatu and Sport Wanganui, although there is one, I suppose, significant change from the last regional sports facilities plan, in that the whole region is split into two sub-regions. So there will be steering groups established for the northern region, which Sport Wanganui will look after, and then the Southern Horizon South region, which Sport Manawatu will, I suppose, manage. so yeah, the MOU would, I suppose, look at the way in which the plan would be implemented amongst those parties. So yeah, it would involve the Sports Trust, the government agency that provides direction for sport and recreation, and the councils. And it would set out, one of the key things of that MOU is that we make an investment as a council to support a staff member at Sport Manawatu, and we have been doing that for the last few years under the 2018 plan. So yeah, it outlines that the nature of that investment, what we're expecting that person, in this case, which will likely be Carl, what we want, Sport Manawatu to do. So it sets out, and also sets out the roles and responsibilities of those steering groups.
Great, thank you. Can I then understand, are there things in the MOU that extend beyond the chief executive's current delegations? Like, I'm trying to understand why we need to further delegate the chief executive to do this, when it kind of sounds to me like those things would sit within the existing delegation policy that we have for the chief executive?
Potentially, I think it's just a confirmation, really, and I suppose it's a document that, hopefully Sport Manawatu will work hard to get everyone's signature on. So there's a regional or sub-regional commitment to the implementation of the plan, but it sets out in, I suppose, a lot more detail than the plan does about the actual actions that are required to implement the plan. You'll see in the plan there are some recommendations made. So, for example, it would be about, bringing through those recommendations. It would establish across the region what the priority projects are. So there's an agreement about those. But yes, I take your point that, it is, I suppose, both a kind of a governance and an operational, document. And Kelly just mentioned to me, it has been the way that, we have operated under an MOU for the last iteration of the plan.
Yeah, great, thanks. My questions are more around the point around delegating the chief executive rather than the need for an MOU per se. So that's been helpful to hear officer perspective on that.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. The acting deputy chief executive, what are you? Deputy acting today. Chris says that we could simply note that the chief executive will enter into a memorandum of understanding. It's not a matter of delegation being required. So maybe that word is a slight red herring in this context. If we could just make that change to note that the chief executive will enter into a memorandum of understanding. Just a follow-up question. I see the memorandum of understanding will be with the seven councils within the region. Have those councils endorsed He Rakitua yet? Where are we up to with them?
Not yet. This council was the first council in the region to consider the endorsement of the plan. It'll be Kelly and Carl's job to take that plan to other councils, and I think a couple are sitting in the wings waiting for meetings for that to happen.
I'm sure. Oh, Councillor Harper. Oh, yeah.
Well, you prompted my question. What happens if they don't sign?
I think there's two ways. One is it's very beneficial for Palmerston North City Council alone to actually have this in place. Then there's what it brings regionally across the horizon is the collaboration aspect. So if you don't sign it, still get all the He Rakitua will still be implemented locally here in regards to the principles, the guidance, and all the benefits that it brings with that. Obviously, if you have it as the regional approach, is what we're working towards, then it's the bigger collaboration around that. But do you want to build on that?
So they still get the benefits even if they don't sign it? That's
No,
what you
they
just
don't
said.
get the benefits.
Okay, that's what you said though.
Oh, sorry, is that what I said?
Yeah.
No, you get the benefits, they don't get the benefits.
Okay.
Because why would they get benefits if they
Okay, this is what I was
Yep.
trying to
Sorry,
understand.
yes.
What you said.
Sorry, I missed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of the questions. Thanks very much for coming in to speak to that. Sport Manawatu colleagues, thanks Anne-Marie for that report. So the recommendation is that Council endorse the Hierarchy Tua Horizons Region Spaces and Places Plan for Sport and Recreation 2023-24, Attachment 1, to inform and guide Council decisions on play, active recreation and sport activities. Secondly, that Council note the Chief Executive will enter into Memorandum of Understanding for implementing Hierarchy Tua Horizons Region Spaces and Places Plan for Sport and Recreation 2023-43. I will move that. Seconded by Councillor Meehan. Open that for any comments. I'll give you a moment. I think it was useful to have the workshop to go through this and help us to understand the implications for not just our council, but for this regional approach that is proposed through having this plan. I am interested to see how it works to decide who does what, who steps into which space and who, maybe more importantly, doesn't, as we recognise the increasing cost of the kind of facilities infrastructure that is often being requested by communities around the region, and recognising that this isn't Oprah Winfrey, and it's like you get a car and you get a car, you get a bowling green and you get a swimming pool. Or certainly we can't have all of those things going on in the city, maybe, that there's an opportunity to look at the region, to look at what's reasonably travelable for our community and make some sensible choices that enable access, that support participation, but that don't continue to drive a large expenditure profile in the sector. But encouraged that this looks like a plan that can land well across the region, that it enables a different flavour to come through in the opportunities and facilities that regions are seeking, and that is something we can work on with our neighbours to hopefully get good outcomes all round. Councillor Dennison, you have a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to support the recommendations. Comments I would make is around that it seems like it's taken a lot of time. In the early years, it was kind of like, oh, we've got to wait for the final regional sports facility plan before we can measure up some of the needs in our community. And so that was one reflection I had. And the other one is just, like you say, interesting to see how it's going to land. And it's taken a long time to even get a conversation going with our neighbouring councils of who might invest for what asset. And the other point around these needs assessment work too, just having a confidence around when they are done that it's free from bias and that the needs are actually done with some of those locations where assets might be invested in. From my view, I feel like we've had a recent example where that was a little bit tainted, and I want to make sure there's some impartiality around that comes forward to us to make some significant investments. So those are the few comments I'd like to make in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennison. No further comments. I'll invite you to vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 10, Annual Progress Report on Heritage Themes in Council Programmes 23-24. I will invite Keegan Aplin-Thane, Senior Planner, Linda Moore, Manager at City Library, to come and present their report. You're having your day in the hot seat today, Keegan.
Tēnā koutou. Yes, back at it again. I thought I'd switch my tie since I'm switching hats today. Senior Planner, Keegan Aplin-Thane, the Strategic Planning Unit, and to bring some mana alongside me, I've got Linda Moore, safe pair of hands from City Library. Thought how we'd approach this report is go through some significant acknowledgements over the calendar year. Given it's a many hands make light work part of kind of council business alongside or supporting from behind with community, and then possibly just touch on any relevant commentary to do with barriers, the barriers section towards the end of the report. We've I've been a little bit cheeky, if you will, with the structure of the report, given at the time of writing the long-term plan hadn't been confirmed. So had avoided to do too much crossover in terms of commentary related to that. For the most part, would expect to see where that lands to inform the next annual report for this, but I expect there might be some questioning. Just a key note, a human error on my part in the drafting of this report, that I had incorrectly referred to Remembrance Day as Armistice Day. So just wanted to acknowledge that one there. And to hand over to Linda for acknowledgement.
Kia ora koutou everyone, thank you. Just really want to acknowledge a lot of people. As Keegan said, looking after the heritage of the city is a team effort. So I really want to acknowledge some people that have been really critical for us to help us do that. So the City Library team, particularly the Heritage team, with a special acknowledgement to Tracy Armstrong, the team leader Heritage, and Virginia Warbrick of then Histories of Pāmutana for a lot of the concept and planning of our Local History Week and Heritage Month this year. Rangitane ki Manawatu, notably Wiremu and Tres Te Auri, and Te Rangimarie Marae, who hosted us for a whiri at the beginning of Local History Week. Then Histories of Pāmutana, Rangitane historians and knowledge holders, and we were very privileged to have a lot of Rangitane people join us on this journey this year, which we're very grateful for. The Palmerston North Heritage Trust, the Palmerston North Defence Heritage Advisory Group, and I just want to acknowledge Joe sitting with us today, the Palmerston North branch of the New Zealand Society of Genealogists, the Manawatu Journal of History, Te Marama Museum of Art, Science and Heritage, joined alongside with the New Zealand Rugby Museum, MavTech, Massey University, in acknowledging our key icons, the Regent, Centrepoint Theatre, who celebrated 50 years this year, Keisha Birch, the Hoffman Kiln, and the Palmerston North Electric Power Station, alongside lots of passionate people in our community and other groups, organisations and individuals who have contributed to our work this year. So it's a very big thank you from us. So just leaning into some of the barriers of advancing our heritage goals, which are included in the report, near to a resolution, and I'm hopeful that we can bring our new city archivist to meet everybody very shortly, so that's out to market. We expect an appointment from that process in mid-July with a potential starting date of mid-August, and this will increase the capacity of the team to meet the increasing demand across looking at our archives, the community archives, to be processed and digitised, and also assisting with local history resources, advice and support for the New Zealand Aotearoa New Zealand curriculum. Also underway is a short-term digital solution. We're working with the digital solutions team for the 9 terabytes of digitised items that we've got to get into safe hands in the cloud. So we've got a short-term solution up and running for 3 months, and that project will be scoped and delivered for a longer-term solution, as council has a lot of digital storage needs increasing exponentially over the next 12 months. To be resolved, and I suppose this is just a little bit of a note of the moving work to be done in the Central Library, is that our archival spaces will need to come up with an immediate plan, a short-term plan to take us through that time period. So of note, we've reviewed the current sort of space. We're looking at how we can lay it out, how we can have hot and cold storage, stuff that we need to get into quickly, stuff that we can take a bit more time with, to rearrange that to get some space efficiencies. And we are investigating some chiller options because, alas, our chiller will not last till year 6 of the 10-year plan. But the property team are very supportive, and Bryce is working alongside us to come up with some solutions. I'm very grateful for the support of the property team as we move through the next 10-year plan as well.
And from me, just taking note of a couple of the LTP decisions made in terms of creating a separate heritage plan, and also this supporting a volunteer heritage advisory group or reference group to help inform the next LTP in the program's intervening period. Comes at quite a good time, obviously, with I suppose, come 4th of August when the Manawatu Heritage Trust comes together for a hui. So good morning tea chatter about what that those two things can shape up as, and also anticipating the need for some future review work around both our heritage funding guidelines in coming years and the heritage section of the district plan, which there's some significant interest in terms of new buildings to potentially add to the list and the likes. And I won't labour it with respect to any of the program changes that you're already across as far as the rest of the long-term plan. And unless there's anything else from Linda, we'll take questions. Yeah, we'll take questions for the chair.
Thank you very much. I had a couple of questions. Just the heritage features incorporated into the Featherston Street Safety Improvements Project, so the Fred Horlows mural and the Silhouettes of Excellence. Did we fund or co-fund those with Boys High?
I believe at a minimum we co-funded, yes.
Okay, lovely. Thank
Through
you.
that Featherston Street project.
Which leads into my next question, which is in the barriers to advancing heritage goals. At 5A, you say programme budgets for transport renewals or upgrades have not historically allocated funding towards delivering heritage outcomes, which made me wonder if in the future they will be.
My response would be it's possibly up to your decision as governance, whether that's a direction to take or not. I suppose just to acknowledge that the inclusion of heritage features into the Featherston Street project and the inclusion of LTP program for the Cuba Street signage is the exception rather than the rule.
Okay. Thank you. And then just that 5B, as a barrier, I think this is just a question about framing this as a barrier. A barrier to advancing a heritage goal is the increased demand for local history resources. That would seem to me to be the opposite of a barrier. It would seem to be an opportunity to advancing heritage goals. But Linda, you probably have a view on that. Is that about our ability to meet that demand?
Yes, it is, and I think with the appointment of a city archivist and having a look at how we might frame that up capacity-wise, I think we'll lean into that. So yes, it's a bit of a, it's a great opportunity. We just need to match it with being able to deliver.
Okay, that's lovely. A question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was just interested in section 4 around events, which is that top panel in section 4. Your acknowledgements referenced heavily the Rangitaneo Manawatu. And I was trying to understand why the events didn't include any mention of Waitangi Day, or whether that was kind of a separate heritage than kind of what we're trying to draw into this report.
I think probably from, if I take a heritage perspective, that we look to start leaning into the heritage of our city with Waitangi Day and the Bicultural Partnership. And I think that's one thing that we would look to Rangitangi to aspire, to tell us how we can lean into that, to aspire to do more. Because ultimately, the celebration of the day is one thing, but it's all of the kaupapa around that, and how we lean into upholding Te Tiriti-led, which is, how we manifest that both in our internal work and externally. So I think we would look to, through Te Wherikoko, come through and ask those questions to make us sort of come together a lot more on that pathway. Does that make sense?
That's some helpful context. So I guess what was there a consideration of including Waitangi Day specifically in that list of events, and was it kind of excluded for those reasons, or did it just kind of not come to mind when the report was being authored?
Yeah, the latter. It was human error on my part to not include it. Yeah. So we can include it with respect to what that shapes up in the future in particular.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. No further questions. So thanks for the report. The recommendation is that the committee receive the memorandum titled Annual Progress Report on Heritage Themes in Council Programmes 23-24, presented to Culture and Sport 26 June. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Meehan. Thank you. Open for any comments? Councillor Barrett.
Just briefly, I continue to find this a very useful report, actually, and it kind of summarizes across a whole range of things. And I think it's continuing to prove its value in drawing our attention to not only what's happening across a range of areas, but kind of hopefully shedding more light on how they're integrated and kind of work together as a function within the community and within council. So just want to thank officers for their work in bringing this to us.
Yeah, thank you. Agree with those comments. It is useful to me that we pull all of this together in one place. It shows the variety of activity. It actually shows the huge ranges of stories that we're telling when we think about the heritage stories of our city. I want to recognise Joe Hollander in the room for his ongoing and vocal commitment to our defence heritage storytelling. And there are many other stories that we're starting to lean into and see made more visible in our community. I suppose I have a continuing niggle with this idea of the storytelling being an add-on at the end of projects that we sometimes have to bring through the chamber to make happen. Cuba Street would be an example of the battle that has been, or sometimes happen excellently within a project. The arena would be an example of that. And then sometimes happen because there's maybe a bit of spare money and a partner we're trying to work with, as in the Featherston Street example with Boys High. And I think I'd like to see us get to a point where we take a more, if not consistent approach, but a more considered approach to how we build in, how we respond to the storytelling opportunities that present themselves as we work in our streetscapes. You know, this is how we engage people with our stories, is when they, well, I was going to say fall over them. I don't want to have people falling over things in the streetscape, but as they come across them, you know, in their lived experience of the city, rather than have to go and seek them out in special places where we hide our stories away. And I'd really like to see us move to a space where that's possible and normal. And I'd hope this report is one way of encouraging officers to think about it in that way. Because the other option is that it comes through the chamber like Cuba Street. And I don't think anybody's enjoyed that experience. I certainly haven't, so I'd like to avoid it in future if possible. No, Councillor Arnott has a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sneaked in, thank you. I'd also, like to say, thank you to Linda and Joe and Keegan and everybody that does stuff for heritage around the city. And, the lecture series is fantastic. There's one last night, Air Force One. I missed that. I was at Defence Hub in Bulls. And, some of the Army guys there, they were talking about Battle of the Bridges. So, let's hope we can get that going again next year in the square. And some of these other exciting activities. So, there is some fantastic things happening, and it's great to see heritage kept in the limelight. And, history's history, whether it's good or bad. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott, and thank you for your active support in the heritage space. Colleagues, I'll invite you to vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you. I feel like we're on a roll today. Thank you very much. Our next 25 year. That council note that the remuneration fees will be adjusted annually for inflation and reviewed by 2027 in accordance with the appointment of directors policy recently reviewed. Happy to move that. Seconded by Councillor Meehan. Open that for any comments. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a few thoughts that I've got about just moving in this direction. There's one is why it may have been assessed that there wasn't a clear indication of where board members were feeling. I think in 3.3 in the final paragraph, it's very clear. The results from the board member survey, 13 out of 15 stated they did not expect to be paid. 7 out of 15 thought the remuneration was not important or not important at all. And when considering, only 3 out of 15 felt remuneration was important or very important. So I don't think there's been a real weight of feedback from our board members that this was needed. Interesting feedback when the chairs are writing to us saying they want it. So it doesn't, that was one point. The second one is around the number of trustees we've got. And I wonder if that's not up for review equally, that the size of is obviously impacting on the way they split the remuneration currently. 9 for Te Manawa, 9 for the Regent, and whether that's another area of review. And because in 1.3 it outlines elected members may resolve to leave the remuneration unchanged. And I guess I'm reflecting a view. I'm just not seeing the compelling need apart from, of moving them at this time. And that would be a view I'm reflecting. And the only thing I'd like to maybe consider is a differentiation for the chairs, which is, again, referring to the report, it's 3.23, that the chairs of the region and globe be lifted to 100 a meeting, just so there's a differential to recognise the extra responsibilities. So in my mind, I'm not going to support the recommendations and would indicate either that the remuneration is unchanged, but the only change is picking up the 3.23. So it was, my alternate would be that the chairs of the region and globe, which is basically under 3.23, so they would be increased to a meeting. The second one would be that all other members' remuneration is unchanged. And so I'd indicate that as a notice of motion if this one fails. Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, seconder.
I think you'll find that's actually redundant, Councillor Dennison, because what you've described is actually what these recommendations seek to achieve. The recommendations are limited to only an increase to the chairs of the Regent and Globe Trust Board, which you've indicated you're in support of, and then the rest are structural recommendations about combining the fees paid to Te Manawa members and introducing an annual fee rather than a meeting fee. So there is no actual increase to the remuneration pool beyond the increase to the chair's payments for the Globe and the Regent.
Is that through the, okay,
Yeah.
well then, this is a long-winded way of saying that, sorry. Okay, I'm comfortable then.
So are you happy to withdraw that notice of motion since you signalled it?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Thank you.
If this is, I didn't quite put the two together, that this looked
I'll take that feedback. I think that could have been made clearer. But yes, the intention is to respond to the request from the chairs to review remuneration, and in doing so, to communicate clearly that we've found that the remuneration is benchmarked at about the right level with this particular concern about fees for chairs, which I think is absolutely valid. I think interesting the point that you raised from wherever that was in the report, I've lost it, about the survey of the 3.3. True to say, and the officer does say that we've not had any appointment recently, notable recently appointing suitable members, and that we're very lucky at the moment with the skill level and diversity of our boards. I'm not confident when we go out and ask people if they think the money's due, that they're all rushing to go, oh yeah, it's a deal. Imagine if we were asked the same question. I think there's very few of us saying, oh no, the remuneration is very important to me in considering how I would stand again. That's simply not human nature to say that. And also interested, Councillor, in your views on the size of the board. And again, I'd reflect on when we've had those conversations about the size of this council. and say, oh, the remuneration would go a lot further if there were fewer of us. That conversation might be one that we want to pick up for both our CCOs and council again in the future, and I think you know my views on that one, so happy to have that conversation, but I think we should lead in that space rather than put that onto our CCOs first. And on that note, I'll ask you to vote on the recommendations in front of us. There are 9 votes in favour. Is that everybody? No? Can we do it again, please? I feel like we might be dropping like flies, but I don't think we got quite that far. Nine votes in favour, 1 against. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Happy? Good, thank you. On items 12, 13 and 14, it's my intention to take those together. They concern the final statements of intent for our, the Globe, for the Regent and Te Manawa. These statements of intent have all been through council and committee in their draft stage. We've sent back our comments. They've all been accepted in full. The changes that we requested have been made. So this, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, is procedural. And so my intention is, unless there are any questions, which you can ask of any of those if you'd like, we would move all 3 of those together and take questions and comments together. Everybody happy with that? Righto. Are there any questions? You'll have to run round, Sarah. The report's presented by Sarah, so she'll just move round. Do you want to go in the queue if you have a question? You've changed your mind, Councillor Denson?
Sorry, I just liaising with the member who declared an interest, I thought at the start of the meeting on 14 whether we should separate 14, but I'm leaving it to her. But it was strange with consistency at the declaration at the start.
Councillor de Bellin? This is entirely up to you. You didn't declare a conflict of interest, you declared an interest.
Declared an interest, that's right. I removed myself from the previous item because there was remuneration. In the nature of what we're discussing here, I'm happy to consider that with an open mind and take the 3 as you propose.
Thank you, Councillor Zabellin. There are no questions, Sarah, so you can sprint back round this way. I'm glad we're keeping your steps up today. So the recommendations are that the committee agree the final statement of intent 2024-2027 attachment 1 submitted by the Globe Theatre Trust Board, submitted by Te Manawa Museums Trust Board, submitted by the Regent Theatre Trust Board. I will move all 3 of those, seconded by Councillor Meehan, open for any comment. There being none, invite you to vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 15 and the last item on the agenda is the committee work schedule. Chris, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, no comments. Happy to take any questions.
Would you like to explain why items 5 and 6 moved from June to September? That's the Acacia Birch Master Plan and the Sculpture Trust report.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so look, so the Acacia Birch House report, which has been on there for a while, it's really just in the LTP, you note there's some money for the master plan, and the work, there's already a lot of work being done on it, but it just makes sense for the team to come back when they've got the planning for the master plan done, and then come back and report it at that time. So that's why that's been pushed out just a little bit. The Sculpture Trust, yeah, that was probably better for Kerry Lee to talk about this. She's away sick at the moment, sorry, but I understand that again there was just they're waiting so they can provide an update on the new MOU with the trust.
Thank you. No further questions from anyone, so I will move the Culture and Sport Committee receive its work schedule dated June 2024, seconded by Councillor May, and invite you to vote. Carried unanimously. Nō reira ngā mihi nui koutou e ngā mana e ngā reo tēnā tātou katoa. I will close out with a karakia. Kia puta ki te whaio ki te au marama, whakamoa ki a tīna. Homie, huie, dai kie. Kia ora everybody. That's the end of Culture and Sport, and now we have to move to the part 2 of Council. What is going to happen since we don't have the Mayor or Deputy Mayor here?